Welcome to Convergence. My name is Michael Doran. Albert Einstein said among the most difficult problems in all of biology was the Earth's magnetic field. I'm a California attorney, and I argue that the Earth's magnetic field is among the most difficult problems in all of biology. Today I'd like to talk about salmon. I'm reading from the Scientific American in 2014, where they're talking about a study where researchers took young Chinook salmon and put each one in a tank. Using magnetic coils, they were able to emulate the magnetic fields at different parts of the salmon's oceanic ranges. They found that when the fish were exposed to magnetic fields like those in the northernmost parts of their usual range, they wanted to swim south to return to the center of their ranges. Conversely, fish exposed to the southern range magnetic field tended to orient themselves northward. Those fish know where they are, and they know where they should be, and they know how to get there, said David Noakes, a professor of fisheries and wildlife, also an OSU and co-author of the paper. It's pretty impressive, he says. Unlike migratory birds, Noakes says, most salmon don't have the opportunity to learn from their forebears where they should go. They only migrate out to the ocean and back to their natal streams to spawn once in their lives before they die. Their parents aren't around to help them do things, he says. They have to do everything in their life right. They don't get to play the game again. If they get it wrong, Noakes said, then the fish will either starve to death, get eaten, or end up in the wrong currents. This means the migratory knowledge has to be internal to the animal, he notes. The study also found that salmon appear to use a combination of two characteristics of the magnetic field at a given location: its intensity or strength coupled with its inclination or the angle of the field compared to the Earth itself. When the fish were exposed to a mismatched field, such as northerly intensity paired with a southerly inclination or vice versa, they became disoriented, indicating that they would use both types of information to figure out where they are and where they should go. Whereas the study showed that salmon inherit some innate maps, it's not clear exactly how the animals perceive them. We can't say that what a fish or a turtle is picturing, Putnam says. What the scientists are stuck with, he says, is looking at the behavior of the salmon and asking how they behave. It's behaving like it has some information about where it is, he says, meaning that it has some sort of internal map based on the magnetic field. Although the fish may use some other environmental characteristics in the wild, such as the sun or olfactory cues, those variables are controlled in the study, meaning that the fish only relied on the magnetic field to decide on which direction they should swim. James Gould, an evolutionary biologist at Princeton University who is not involved in the study, wrote in a commentary on the paper that the fish may not have a map like the kind we might imagine, but instead something akin to an Excel spreadsheet with lists of magnetic coordinates with the seasonal appropriately directional response filled in. That is, the fish may simply perceive the magnetic field at a given location and, like a GPS, have essentially a voice command in its head that tells it where to swim. Putnam thinks this is likely the case for the salmon. If I had to bet, I would say it's probably been happening, or what's happening, he says. So what's interesting to me about this is, again, it's a behavior of a creature tied to the Earth's magnetic field. And if you think about it, if the magnetic field slowly becomes different, then that disorientation can lead to a swim up perhaps a different stream and may result in the survival of the salmon rather than it passing with a changing magnetic field. The other thing that I think is really important is when the salmon swim upstream, their skin starts to rot because they go from saltwater to freshwater. Saltwater causes the skin to burst and becomes a carrier for microbes. So you end up with a creature that is passing information uphill in terms of microbes upstream. It's against thermodynamics for that information to travel upstream, and then it's eaten by bears or eaten by birds or eaten by other creatures, and then further that information goes through the digestive tracts of those creatures and further is spread around that information. And an eagle could fly again up a mountaintop and move that information in terms of bacteria all the way upstream. One thing that some of the local fishermen here talk about is how the salmon aren't doing so well. Certainly above the dam, they can't cross the dam. Here, this is a fish ladder here, and a dam that's seasonal. And the dam comes up during the summertime and moves water over a canal over here. And there's a fish ladder behind me, and the fish will go up the fish ladder and continue up to the dam. But what the local fishermen will say is that because the dams change the flow, it changes the nutrient content of the water, and the salmon aren't doing as well. The other thing, of course, about dams is that they release during the dry season, and that's not the time of year that the salmon necessarily migrate. The other interesting thing to talk about is salmon are among the most nutritious omega-3 foods that we eat. And if you think about something that's being consumed by everything, going up and dying and then becoming food, it's just contrary to normal biological processes where something wants to survive. It is designed to be food. And again, you get these ecologies where either the bathroom of something that has eaten it or just its own bathroom fertilizes plants, and then the plants are eaten by insects, and then the salmon will eat the insects. And the way it migrates, the migration is more by sense of smell in the freshwater, but in the oceans, where again it's conductive, and you get these capacitive couplings over the ocean and storms, and then rain feedbacks that are very dependent upon what the chemical content is flowing down the river. The salmon are once again the part of the quantum brain of a living Earth. If you think about all the movements that the salmon do or make, along with sensing the magnetic field of the Earth, this is a tremendous amount of information that they must keep, and is, to me, again, another huge clue that we're talking about an animal with a quantum brain, able to store incredible amounts of information in a tiny place. So the salmon are one of the key feed sources of life up on the river, and the rivers, in my opinion, act like giant antennas that electrically are huge feedbacks and impacts to what's going on, and the carbonation that they send downstream it is an incredible signal that affects storms and affects rain feedbacks. And these feedbacks have occurred over huge timescales, so that the subterranean becomes impacted, and the conductive pathways that follow over, again, huge timescales, that there's a complexity to the geology, to the subterranean, that over time life has been able to hewn out of it itself, and feedback. So when you talk about the initial part of life forming in nucleotides in clouds 3.7 billion years ago or whatever, and then changing electrical conditions, more luminous sun, and then the nucleotides being really forced out of the clouds, they still remain part of carbon life, but in kind of hidden in other life. They've gone from being outside of the cell to being part of the cell, where the cells try to create conditions that are very much like what the atmosphere was. All right, that's all I have for you today. Please subscribe if you like, press like if you like. Have a great day.